common sense is not that common.
Yes. Yep.
And I think that's ultimately what you have been teaching everybody. And that's why you say this, study till your eyes bleed.
Yep.
Because what you're trying to say is recognize the patterns so that you are not caught up in the pattern, but that you're consciously saying, this is my pattern. And when this pattern isn't happening, I'm not going to play.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Steady Trade Podcast. Got a cool episode today, really enjoyed it. Welcoming back our old friend Kim Ann Curtin, and the agenda for today was we actually welcomed Kim as an official member of the podcast. If you've been following along to recent episodes, you know Kim has done a bunch of episodes, but was basically just a guest in the past. And we've gotten so many great comments, and not just the comments, but I tell you, I've really enjoyed working with Kim. If you're familiar, and I highly recommend going back in the archive and checking out some of the episodes with her. We introduced her, went over her book kind of early on. Then she actually did, she's known as the Wall Street Coach. She did several coaching sessions with me and Steven. Some very interesting stuff. I think back to the session, maybe you listened to it. It was fun. It was interesting. I'm not, many of you listeners know, I'm not not the type to kind of show my vulnerable side, but Kim brought it out, and it was an interesting conversation, and it was a couple months ago, and I still think about it today. I think that it was impactful. I think it made a difference in my thinking. I think it made a difference in my approach to trading, especially on that emotional side. Hey, I'll be the first to admit that I'm one of those guys that when things don't go well, I've broke mice before, I've broke keyboards, I've hit my desk so hard that my computer locked up on me before. So it was very interesting to work with her, and now excited to bring her as as an official member of the podcast. She will be here most episodes, depending on her schedule. You'll probably always be stuck with me, whether you maybe you like that, maybe you don't. But pretty much, I'm sure every episode I'll be on as the main host. But having Kim come along and join Steven as co-host is exciting. We'll do a lot of podcasts with all three of us. We'll still do kind of mixes with guests and interviewees. And so really excited about 2020. This episode, I'm not sure when it will air, but we're recording late November. We've got some great plans. Really fired up for 2020 with StocksToTrade. And then the second part of the episode is we're talking about, Kim has been coaching me on the emotional side of things, on the ego side of things in trading. And what we're announcing today is she's actually beginning her journey into penny stocks. So even though, she coaches many hedge funds and big Wall Street traders, she's never really waded into this place that we love so much. I'm sure you're listening because you love penny stocks as much as I do. And so as kind of a project for the podcast, as well as my way of giving back to her, we're starting the process of coaching her on trading these wild penny stocks, starting out at the beginning. So the neat thing is, if you're new to the podcast and you happen to just kind of stumble across this, I give a bunch of getting started resources because, when it comes to trading, day trading penny stocks, Kim is new as they get. So you may share a lot with her, and we go over a lot of those resources in this podcast. And as always, Kim and I, we have a great relationship, and we both read a lot of books, so we talk about that a lot. And it was a fun episode, as they all are with Kim. So I hope you enjoy it and have a great day. So welcome back to the Steady Trade Podcast. As I mentioned on the introduction, we're back here with Kim Ann Curtin, the Wall Street Coach. So this week we want to go over a couple things and kind of welcome Kim as an official member of the podcast. I'll make sure it's linked below, but we did a blog post recently breaking down, kind of a bio of Kim and her history. And, if you're a listener, you're probably familiar with Kim. I mean, she's been on, I think, maybe close to 10 different episodes between features with Steven, working with me, as well as just kind of, we've been working on the book club, etc. So what is interesting, maybe interesting to many of you as a listener, is, Kim, even though she's had a long history of teaching traders and coaching traders, she is kind of new to actually pressing those buttons, looking at the chart patterns. She's more of a performance coach focused on day trading, where not necessarily out there pressing the buttons. So we've if you're a listener to the podcast, you might remember a funny conversation where we talked about Tom Brady, and Kim had no idea who Tom Brady is. But
I knew who he was. I just didn't know the team he played for.
Fair enough. So
he's handsome. I make a point of making sure I know all the handsome men.
Yes, I have quite a man crush on Tom Brady. Yes, I do. So, but
you should come with a warning label. He's so
but what I think about Kim is she's the Bill Belichick, which again, Kim, you might not know. He's the coach of the New England Patriots. Arguably, I think, arguably one of the greatest coaches of all time, but he never played in the NFL. He wasn't out there, running a 4-flat 40 or jumping 48 inches in the air or catching footballs, but he was a longtime studier of the game. And so that's kind of where I joke about, going back to that other episode, is now I'm going to put a helmet on Kim and we're going to send her into the game and see what happens. So
that's an awesome metaphor, Tim. I love you for that metaphor.
Now, hopefully she doesn't come out with brain damage and a broken leg like
no
many NFL players. Yeah, no teeth, but yeah.
You're gonna have to go easy on me, you and Steven, because I really like my front teeth. We spent a lot on braces when I was little, and I want no head concussions. I've already had a couple from my paddling, so.
Yep. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've had several too as well. But
that's an awesome. What a great honor to be compared to the world's greatest football coach. I feel really flattered. So thank you. Good metaphor. I like it.
So again, make sure to check out that blog post. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go into my plan for Kim, my expectations, my goals. And the neat thing is you'll be able to follow along. We'll probably do, again, going back to welcoming Kim to the podcast, we've got some amazing plans for 2020. We've got a bunch of awesome stuff, but, we'll ideally maybe do once a month, maybe once every 6 months, we'll check in with Kim and kind of see how she's doing with the study and see how she's doing. I'll urge her to initially paper trade. Maybe she'll make some real trades, but you'll be able to follow along and kind of see that journey, because I know many of you listening out there are probably in similar situations. Maybe you got a day job that you don't like. Maybe you're just looking for the freedom of trading. Maybe you're just curious about trading and you're wondering where to start. So that's what's cool about this this episode is all of these resources I'm going to give Kim, you can follow along. So if you're looking to learn this, if you're maybe you've done stuff in your IRA, or maybe you've bought some Apple or bought some Google and you're kind of, like, hey, these stocks don't move that much. I'd like to make more money. And you hear Steven and I, talking about these low price stocks recently. I think the 2 episodes ago was pretty wild. Kim wasn't on that episode, but Steven has turned 700 into, I think, $5,000 like 4 times now. He's got this kind of methodology where he's just he builds his account up, takes the money out, and repeats it. And Steven, all of as listeners, I mean, Steven's got a day job. He's actually got a couple jobs, trading on the side, and he's making thousands of dollars just by clicking a computer in his spare time. And if you're out there listening, that can add up over time. I mean, again, if you repeat Steven's performance, all of a sudden, at the end of the year, maybe you made enough to buy a car, not a Lamborghini, not a Ferrari,
Right.
but maybe you made enough to buy a nice Honda Accord or something.
Exactly. Which is still nice to have.
Yeah, very reliable, great car. So, or maybe, you know, again, out there as a listener, I mean, the world we live in, maybe you pay off a couple credit cards, you know, and that's a big deal. Now you paid off 2 credit cards with brutal interest rates. That's right. And now you're putting, you know, you're not sending that money out. So that's kind of the journey we're going to embark on with Kim. So what I would like to know, Kim, is so like what, and I think we briefly discussed this, but what is your history in trading? I mean, have you ever made a trade
I've never made a trade. Never made a trade. And really what's so fascinating is that my interest in finance came because of Jim Rogers. Really, when I read Investment Biker, I worked for years for Borders Books and Music, and I had this, it was a massive store, and I was doing operations, and one of the sections I was responsible for was business, which was just a really, really large section. But I was intrigued by the cover because he was on the motorcycle, you know, with the landscape behind him. And when I got into that book, what I distinctly remember was how, in spite of the politics of China at the time, you know, he was seeing democracy on the ground because of him riding that motorcycle, and his willingness to invest and his kind of knowing that he was going as an outlier against what was being talked about in the papers. That was the first thing that intrigued me. So it's kind of fascinating. Here I am probably 25, 30 years later, not having really done, but that's what really intrigued me. I thought, wow, I think when I read that book, I related to him because I knew Pearl Jam was going to be a success, right? I've always been able to see these things ahead of the curve and notice them. And I remember reading that book.
Can you sing me the lyrics to Yellow Ledbetter?
No, not that quickly.
That's probably that might be my favorite Pearl Jam song.
Is it really? I got to meet Pearl Jam.
Or Even Flow.
Can I tell you? Even Flow. Oh yeah, Even Flow. I feel 10 is the best album of all time. And listening to that from start to finish, to me, is like an opera. Yep. It is just like, it takes you up, it takes you down, it takes you in and out. It's just a work of art. But I was working for Tower Records at the time. Sony came in, took us on a bus. Nobody had ever heard of Pearl Jam. 10 was coming out like in a couple of weeks. They opened at Roseland for Red Hot Chili Peppers, and it was like a religious experience. And I remember watching them on that stage, Eddie Vedder, and I was like, they are going to be as big as the Beatles. Like, I just could tell. It was just an incredible experience. Incredible experience. And you know,
so did you say you got to meet them too? Or?
Yeah, we got to meet them.
That's cool. Oh,
they came on the bus because Sony, you know, was trying to do this big plug, and we were the front lines. Eddie didn't come on the bus. I have to be honest. I was devastated because, you know, he was so handsome too. And so, but we got them all. I still have the CD. I'll bring it for you to see the next time. I have the autographs on their CD. But the point is, like, I remember Jim Rogers not looking at what everybody else was looking at, but seeing with his own eyes to make a determination about where to invest. And I just remember thinking, wow, I feel I see things that the majority don't see. What if that could help me make money? And yet I've never literally done it. So I'm a little nervous, but I'm also very excited to do this. So I have a great
it's funny. 2 interesting things. And again, you know, one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you on the podcast is, like, there's so many like little weird connections that, you know, the way we think. I mean, again, you know, I'm a huge, longtime fan of Jim Rogers. Again, we'll link it below. Had an awesome podcast with Jim, but it was like, I mean, it's funny. Even before, what's interesting about these weird idiosyncrasies, you know, here, even before I started actively day trading, was always a huge fan of Jim and just the way he thought, you know, as a thinker. Yeah. And then the wild thing is, and you know, hand on the Bible, I wrote this down before we started recording, and you know, I don't know if Kim opened up some of the docs I sent her, but one of my to-dos for her it's like so parallel to what you just said with Jim Rogers. Is one of my goals for you is to start thinking like a trader and looking for ideas everywhere.
I did see that.
And the weird thing is, you basically just said that that's one of the things you admired about Jim. Here he's driving his motorcycle around the world, which is a wild adventure.
Totally.
But he's looking for trade ideas. He's like, hey, there's something going on here. I need to invest in China.
That's right. So even this is a communist regime, on the ground, he saw entrepreneurship at hand. He saw farmers who were making a living. Like he was seeing like, oh, what they say is happening isn't the same as what's happening. And then the other thing, the other person that is influenced me, but he was many years later, is Victor Niederhofer, who I'm really honored to say is a friend, and his wonderful wife, Susan Niederhofer, who really helped introduce me to conscious capitalism. But Victor's book, The Education of a Speculator, is just an extraordinary book about how
I'm familiar with Victor, but I've never read that. So
maybe I can ask Victor to come on the show. Victor used to run in New York City Junto, which of course was all named after Ben Franklin's, little group. But we always talked about Ayn Rand, and we always talked about, kind of capitalism. It was just the most amazing cultural experience. And Victor in his book talks about how he would look at patterns, like if there were a lot of people who had cigarettes had put out on the street, like that indicated something to him. And so I'm so excited. I saw that in your notes for me, to start to look. And I feel like thrilled to like finally be able to take maybe the way I look at the world and do something with it.
See, and that's where, again, that's why I'm excited about this project, is because I am, obviously this is going to sound funny, I am aware of how aware you are, but and again, that's I'm always looking for for these trends, and I'm telling you, this is for the listener. I mean, everybody likes to quite frequently overcomplicate what we do in short-term trading, but remember, the idea, what we're looking for is things that are in the zeitgeist, things that are in the public consciousness. Those become the biggest runners, because when people see Bitcoin go from 300 to 20,000, in December 2017, that was one of the greatest months ever for day trading equities, because everyone was like, hey, I'm a little scared of Bitcoin, but I can go to my brokerage account and I can trade these stocks that are in that sector. Became huge opportunities. Everybody knows about the weed stock run, especially, the biggest run was back in 2015 when, Colorado and Washington legalized. And we had runners, multi-month runners at that point. And we've seen it with so many trends. So I think that's why that would be great. And it's funny you made up or mentioned the fact that parallel with Jim, but man, it's that simple. If you see, we joked about, in the day trading community, like White Claw, it's like that drink that like everybody's drinking.
That's right.
Now they're not, that you can't, it's not a penny stock, but it's like, right. That's the similar idea where all you see these memes on the internet of White Claw and stuff. It really is that simple to find something that everyone is talking about, because that's where the money flows. Because in penny stocks and low price stocks, the beauty of low price stocks and what we do is it attracts 99% get rich quick mentality. Okay, everybody wants in now. They want to pile in with their entire account. They want to make money now
and then pull out.
Yep, but
that's not the way it works.
Exactly. But the beauty it is if you recognize that, and that's what hopefully we bring the listener with the podcast is, we recognize that, and we're going to capitalize on that. We're going to have a realistic expectation. We're not looking. I know guys.
Wham bam, thank you, ma'am.
Yes, exactly. In and out. Take consistent.
This is a long-term relationship.
There we go. It's not
monogamous long-term relationship.
A great example I have is I have a friend, and I won't name him, and I keep bugging him to come on the podcast, but he has a business, but he had like, I think he had like $20,000 in Bitcoin before the run, and all the way up, I'm like, he turned 20 into like 250, and I'm like, sell. He's like, no. It was worth like 500. I'm like, sell. He's like, no. And then it goes all the way back down to like 60. Okay. Now he's still up, and he'll be like, well, I'm still up 300%. And I'm like, yeah, but God, I tried getting you to sell up $250,000, and you wouldn't, because, and he admitted, I mean, he's got a business. He doesn't need the money.
Yeah.
But he admitted, he's like, everybody said it was going to $1 million. Everybody said Bitcoin $1 million, Bitcoin $1 million. And so the point is, when we approach it as consistent traders and realistic traders, we can capitalize off of that get rich quick mentality. And
totally,
we're not going to hold for $1 million. Okay.
No.
But we can take 20, 30, 40, 50% along the way. And then that's what we talk. That's why it's called the Steady Trade Podcast, and not the, get rich quick today stock trading podcast. Exactly. Wouldn't be a very catchy name.
It wouldn't be, but it also wouldn't be effective. And it's also, I mean, what you're saying is common sense is not that common.
Yes. Yep.
And I mean, it's common sense that if something is going up, like it's going to hit that bubble, is going to break at some point. That just seems to be common sense, not like fancy trader sense, but common sense is not that common. So good, we benefit financially if we have that. And I think that's ultimately what you have been teaching everybody. And that's why you say this, study till your eyes bleed.
Yep.
Because what you're trying to say is recognize the patterns, so that you are not caught up in the pattern, but that you're consciously saying, this is my pattern. And when this pattern isn't happening, I'm not going to play.
Yep. And have that long mindset too. Again, it's like if there's a million different ways to say this, but I mean, the harder you push on the market, I mean, the market is monolithic, and the harder you push, the harder it pushes back. It's like pushing two magnets together.
It's like the ocean.
Yep.
You can't fight the ocean.
Yep. Same, very simple. And if you push too hard because you want to make, again, Lamborghini money today, you're going to fail. But if you take that slow and steady approach, back to, like I said a little while ago, hey, wouldn't you like to, I mean, hey, again, I'm not a big fan of the debt and the buy it now and pay for it late culture we live in. But I mean, hey, if you're listening and you got 3 credit cards that are maxed out, how awesome would it be to be looking at, October 2020 and those credit cards are paid off? I mean, that's awesome. It gives
game changing,
and it gives you freedom. That's something
totally.
That I was at an event in New York, and that was the core of my presentation is take advantage of the fact that you don't have to trade every day.
Yep.
And if you make if you make a few thousand here or there, and now you don't have to worry about that credit card bill, or you don't have to worry about these things. That's freedom. And then you can do stuff you love, when you're not worried about paying the bills,
Cognitively draining.
Exactly. Yep. Because I mean, that just wears you out. Yeah.
It does. And it doesn't allow you to even enjoy your downtime because you're feeling the pressure of it all the time. And what other band or musician that I was very much ahead of the curve on? Can you guess? Starts with an L.
Well, for the sake of brevity, it's not coming to me. We'll move on. I don't want to. I don't.
Introduced her to you a couple of weeks.
Lizzo.
She was unknown when I was talking about her, and now she's all over the place. Her songs have been. She's even got a cranberry juice commercial about the juice. I mean, I was so ahead of that curve.
So here's here's my Jim Rogers investment idea. How do we capitalize on this?
I know.
You got to get us some sort of private equity musician fund or something that we can put money into. So
clearly, I got an eye for music. I'm gonna have to find the stocks that have anything to do with music.
So that is that. Again, we'll kind of head towards the end here. I just, my biggest goal was kind of to introduce Kim and introduce the plan, and then now we're gonna wrap up with the homework. So this is the homework I'm gonna get assigned to Kim, and again, like I said, we'll check in with Kim as as time permits. She's busy with the podcast. She has her own business. Definitely check out the Wall Street Coach, her book. Check out her website. She's got a lot going on. But the great part about this is you can learn at your own pace. There's no pressure. So if you're listening, follow along. And I think it's a great way to kind of learn this stuff. Is just with all of these free resources we're going to give you.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited.
That being said,
what's my homework?
Yep. You've got the doc.
Professor Tim. Yeah. Professor Tim.
So what I want you to start with, and this is great because you can do it on the treadmill or walking the dog or whatever, but start with season 1 of the Steady Trade podcast. So back when we started, we had like this seasons idea. We were going to do like seasons covering different topics, but then we just kind of evolved over the time and we went away from that. But the cool thing about season 1, it's like the first, you'll have to look, 6 or 8 episodes.
Okay.
Steven and I go from like the basics, like what do we look for? What are the patterns? Why do we look at these stocks? How do we trade them? So, and obviously you, the listener, I think it's a great place to start because what I love about it is, I'm a huge fan of podcasts. Again, you can just listen at your leisure, driving. If you've got, if you've got an hour commute, listen to this, and then you can learn this stuff. So start with season 1 because I think that's going to help you really understand what we're looking for. Because again, you're new to this. If I was like, find me a penny stock, Kim, you'd be like, So, so season 1 will help you that.
Okay.
Then you'll get Kim. Later today, you're going to get an email with a series of how to use and how to set up StocksToTrade. It's a video series done by me, so cool. you get to listen to me, rant in your ear for a few more hours.
Okay, that's okay.
So you'll get an email to that. You'll have a link to get StocksToTrade, and so you'll be able to follow along, set up the software the way I recommend it. So you're basically getting ready, now while you got your platform set up, you got your toolbox ready in essence, then you can listen along to season 1 of Steady Trade. If you're a listener to the podcast, just go to StocksToTrade.com, get the trial. If you get the trial, you get access to all these same videos I'm sending to Kim. So as soon as you sign up for the trial, you'll get an email listing all of those, and just step through, get the software set up the way you want, and you can do that with the trial. So
perfect.
Last thing, and I don't want to heap too much on you.
Okay.
Is
Lay it
just,
on me.
and you were doing it anyway.
Yeah.
But it's just to work through all of the books on the Steady Trade Book Club.
Okay.
So again, to the listeners, go in the archive. I think, depending on when this episode airs, we did so far as of today, there's an introduction to the book club. We went over the first book, and then in a week or so, we'll be going over the second book. So depending on when you listen to this, because you might hear it, you might hear this 2 months down the road or whatever, jump back in the archives at SteadyTrade.com, check out those books. It's a cool thing. I enjoy it because, we're just getting started. We've only done 1 book, but it's neat because Kim gives her perspective, Steven gives his perspective, I get my perspective. And it's a neat, I like the approach we took is all 3 of us picked books. So it's kind of like, it's not just Tim's favorite books or Steven's or Kim's. It's it's a diverse mix of books, and then you get each of our viewpoints on it. So
I have the books that you chose. Is it the statistical analysis? What's that formal title?
Is a multiple time frames. Technical analysis using multiple time frames by Brian Shannon.
That book has not been cracked open yet. And I look at it every day and I go, I feel a little afraid.
Well, the cool thing is, and I will give you access to this. So the neat thing is, when you're ready to start that one, let me know.
Okay.
Because what I did in Stocks to Trade Pro is I did a 5 webinar series working right through that book. So
Wow.
basically what I did, I think it's a must read. I mean, if you're interested in day trading, buy that book, Multiple or Technical Analysis Using Multiple Time Frames by Brian Shannon. It's 12 years old, and it's about as perfect as it gets
Wow.
when it comes to these patterns and stuff like that.
It's awesome.
So anyway, when you're ready, Kim, I'll
Yeah.
send you that
Okay,
webinar
good.
or webinar series
Perfect.
where I go chapter. I do, like, I think the book is like 20 chapters. So each webinar I go through 4 chapters,
That's awesome.
treating it like a textbook in a college course.
Yeah.
So
Good. Perfect.
I
Can't wait.
annotate it. I do whiteboard drawings, etc. So
Nice.
if you're
Awesome.
the listener, if you're listening to the Steady Trade podcast, you can go to StocksToTrade.com/pro, and that's the mentorship program where I do twice daily webinars where we do all of this stuff. So I'll give them to Kim. If you're just a normal listener, you got to check out Stocks Trade Pro. So.
Exactly. Lucky me.
So, in summary, what do you think? You excited about this?
I'm very excited. I'm very excited, and I can feel, like I'm going to be very curious how I do around my own emotions, because to be able to see people and their emotions and be able to help them keep them in check is very different than keeping my own emotions in check. I mean, obviously when we're coaching other people, it's different than when we're coaching ourselves, but it's going to give me, it's a little vulnerable. I feel a little vulnerable, because it's like, I'm going to have this audience, what if it doesn't go well?
Hey,
what if I'm like, I am completely in, Tim, and I've lost so much money?
Well, again,
I do.
We're going to paper trade initially,
Okay,
until we get you consistent, because and this goes for all of the listeners out there. And we talk, Stephen and I talk about this a lot in past episodes. Listen, if you're a newbie, I beg you not to use real money. I mean, we have tools to simulate this stuff, and it's no different than a flight simulator. Okay, I have dreams someday of, I have too many hobbies, but I would like to get my pilot's license. Yeah. But I mean, if I show up to the airport and they're like, "Hey, jump in," see if you can, I'll be like, "No way," So trading is like that. But the bad part about trading is nobody stops you. At least with a plane,
they'd stop.
If I'm like, "Hey, let me fly this thing," they'd be like, "No," But with trading,
nobody stops you.
The brokers want you.
Stop yourself before you lose the house.
So in that is why I'm, and the point I want to make back to what you said is, see, that's why I'm so excited about this project, because it's one thing to read the books. It's one thing to look at the charts. It's one thing to say, cut your losses early. It's one thing to say, trade the minimal amount of setups, treat yourself like a retired trader, only trade. But at the end of the day, what's interesting about trading, it's just you in that mirror, man. And that's why I'm excited to hear your insight. And hey, we all make mistakes in this game. We all take those big losses. Yeah. And that's something that we talk about a lot on the podcast. And if that time comes, maybe it won't, but if you make a mistake, if you overstay in a stock, I'm excited to talk about that, especially, from your, I think a more aware perspective is the way to put it.
Totally.
It's like,
totally.
Hey, I mean,
my empathy for all the traders can only increase then, right? I already have a lot of empathy for them, but having firsthand, like just this renovation, I have this office space now because of this amazing podcast co-hosting. I needed really high-speed internet because I live on a mountain where we don't get access to that. And just the renovations of getting the floor and the paint and, the molding, and my my girlfriend April just like killed it, her willingness to help me get this place ready and on time. But it was so much work, and it's a small office, 200 square feet. And yet now my empathy for people who do home renovations through the roof. So if I'm in this trading kind of, swamp myself, and I imagine I'm going to have even more empathy and understanding for those I work with. So it should be very exciting. Little nervous, but also mostly excited.
Well, and again, it's like I think, my perspective is, just like we talked about all the time is, I'm not expecting you to, even if it is paper trading, I'm not expecting you to crush it, next month. Maybe this could be a multi-year project. You've read the books. Many of the listeners have read the books. Some of the most successful traders took years,
Definitely.
and there's nothing wrong with that, so.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Well, just be gentle with me, Tim.
I'll do my best. My best.
You can kick my ass when you need to, but
So in summary, I would like to thank everyone for listening. And so remember, if you're listening on iTunes, we reference a lot of stuff. So the best thing to do is go over to StocksToTrade. We've got a great team. We've got a writing team that actually listen to the episodes. They bullet out all these things we talk about. I mentioned the podcast or the blog post introducing Kim. Great blog post. All these books we mention, they'll all be there. So love that you listen on iTunes or you're listening on Android. But as we mention these things, remember, you don't have to just Google the things. You can go to StocksToTrade and they link everything there. So, all right, Kim, I'm excited. I'm ready
excited
to go.
too.
So
I'm excited too.
And not only on your journey, but I'm also excited, for 2020. Kim and I, we can't tell you, that's the standard, podcast fashion. You always got to be all secret, but to drive that interest, we got to get you keeping coming back, listening to the episodes. But we've got some big plans, awesome guests. Kim's got an amazing Rolodex of contacts in the trading community. So looking for big things from the StocksToTrade podcast in 2020.
Absolutely. Lots of fun. A hui ho. We say a hui ho in Hawaii, so I'm going to say a hui ho.
What's hui ho mean?
It means until we meet again.
Fair enough. All right. Great way to close. Hui ho to you, the listener, and you too, Kim. We'll see you next time.